Yeah, we're live. I'll be right back. Move this out of the way. And I'm back. So, you know what they say, when life gives you lemons, you got to make lemonade. So, and I say the same thing about lots and lots of different parts that I see in the wrecking yard when a lot, and I know that I was like this before because I didn't know any better, and because I was, you know, we were all fed these things like, oh yeah, stock exhaust manifolds are terrible. You got to get headers. If you're building a turbo kit, you have to build something specific for it, and you know all of these things. A lot of which, as we've come to find out, are not true. Camshafts, perfect example. Intake manifolds. Oh, this intake manifold loves boost. No, they all love boost. They all do what they did before. They just do more of it now with boost. Excuse me. Same thing with exhaust manifolds. When I see an exhaust manifold like the one that I have up in the thumbnail, or really any exhaust manifold, even headers. When I see headers, I think, oh yeah, a T4 flange would fit on that just perfectly, and then it should have a turbo on it. That's how I envision all the stuff. My world is like that. It's full of turbos. So the stock exhaust manifold is the same thing. So you look at that and you go, oh man, it has a lot of things going against it. It's heavy. Okay, I get that, it is. But the cool thing is it's heavy, but it retains lots of heat. And it lasts really basically forever. It's going to last longer than you have your car. But that's one of the reasons that I have the exhaust manifolds that I have for the turbo application on the LS and others as well. I've used stock exhaust manifolds for other things. And if I have headers, we might try that too. But the stock exhaust manifolds work well because they retain the heat, which we like. They stay hot, which you like if you're going to get off and on the, you know, on the throttle and want the boost to come back and back and back and forth. And so that works really well. But, and then also, like I mentioned in the description, the thing that I like most about the stock exhaust manifolds is a lot of times when we go there, when we go to the wrecking yard and we get the LS stuff specifically, but other applications as well. There's lots of them that are like this, because what our guys do is they go in and they have like hydraulic pinchers. They just go in and cut the exhaust. So they want to cut the cats off because I guess they've got to get rid of those or whatever. We can't sell them, at least not in California. Maybe they can in other states. I don't know, but they cut those off. And then what that leaves, though, is it leaves the exhaust manifold and then leaves the flange to, you know, to attach the rest of the exhaust to. And so this is the perfect thing, like on the LS example, it's a perfect thing to make your own Y pipe out of. Yeah. It's just begging really to be merged together. And then the other cool thing, and this is something that's relatively recent in the last 10 or 20 years for me, and that's that single exhaust truck applications like small block Chevys, small block Fords, whatever, a lot of times they'll come down off the stock exhaust manifolds, whether it's in the center or the exit out the back or whatever. When they run a single exhaust back, you know, on a lot of these applications where they're not running dual exhaust, they come down and merge together into a Y. Even if they come in like this, even if they come in at a 90 and they don't Y together nicely so the flow is all merged and even, that doesn't matter. Even if they come in at a 90 and then it goes back as a single exhaust, if you have those exhaust manifolds, that section of Y pipe, and then you cut it off after the merge and you put a flange on there to mount a turbo kit, you have a turbo kit. All of that will work for a turbo. I know it's not a perfectly smooth merge. I know it has stock exhaust manifolds. I know it's going to hurt flow. It's going to hurt power. And yet what's going to happen? You're going to put a turbo on there. It's going to spool up. It's going to make boost, and it's going to make a lot more power. Did you leave 10 or 20 or whatever on the table from the merge or from the stock exhaust manifolds or whatever because you don't have headers and all that? Well, are you going to spend the extra $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 or whatever it's going to take to cure that problem? Or are you just going to do this and make it work and get the turbo on there and go run it? Because that's the thing. Just think about all the time you can spend doing it that way, getting this wrecking yard stuff. all the time you could spend out enjoying it and doing it while you're simultaneously complaining about it that it's not good enough, it doesn't merge, it's the pipes are too small, you have stock exhaust manifolds on it, you don't have a tuned length of header to get all the pulses exactly right, which is going to amount to about 0 on the combination that you have anyway. So and this happens an awful lot. I get comments from guys that are like, yeah, but I got to do it this way because, you know, the merge and the pulses, and I'm like, you have a stock 318 or a 318 Mopar with a cam and a kegger manifold. This merge stuff that you're talking about, that doesn't exist. It does exist, but it's not going to make any difference. You will be able to make the power that, whatever the power you have now, you'll be able to make 30, 40, 50, 100% more than you have now with some hokey turbo kit, and it will work perfect, and it will be awesome. If you can get the tune right on it, which is usually the big thing on these things, you can do that. And so when I'm walking, it's really nuts when I walk through the junkyard, because I see that stuff. Like I see the exhaust manifolds, I'm like, yes, oh yeah, that almost has to have a turbo on it. There's no reason that shouldn't have a turbo on it. But it's the same thing with all the other pieces that I see in there. I see a piece of tubing. Oh, that's a really good air intake for a turbo. You know, hoses and all that stuff. They're all stuff that I want and I want to reuse. The inlet systems, particularly intake manifolds. Like I like intake manifolds. I like the way that they look, and I like what they do, and I like seeing all of them. You know, quad 4 stuff. Some of the Toyota stuff. I like all the Honda you know, all of that stuff. I just walk by and I just want to look at it, and I just it's hard for me to go to wrecking yard because I just want all of that stuff. And I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm, you know, like if I had to bring home 15 motors, I want them, and I would eventually want to run them, but you know, I have enough going on already. But it's a difficult deal. But on the stock exhaust manifold deals, like on the one that I have the thumbnail on, that particular one is a Pontiac one. And it also, because it's an older car, it has that heat riser on it. So when I see that, I think two things. One, turbo manifold, obviously, it's got to have a turbo. It's either got to be part of the Y for the single turbo, or it can also be its own thing for twin turbos. And then I see the heat riser valve, and I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if you could make a quick spool valve out of that, or do something so that at least you're generating most of the exhaust on one side. I'm wondering if because it has a valve in it, it's exhaust, it's already, you know, it's already designed for that kind of heat. Maybe not for turbo heat, but it's already designed for heat. So it just makes me think of some of those things, like repurposing a lot of that stuff that was designed, obviously. And this is even better for this particular thing, because this is designed for warm up or smog, and if it's a smog equipment thing, there's something philosophical about taking something because that vehicle, because it's so old, it doesn't need that equipment anymore, and repurposing that and having it be a performance piece. So that's kind of sweet, taking it off and putting on something else that we would run on the engine dyno and having it become a performance piece. You know, there's just something philosophically wonderful about that. And the other reason that I have the photo up of the Pontiac thing is because today, and this is one of the great things about the car community, and you know, for the most part, the people are all really good. We get some people that are not. David Freiberger just posted a thing about him taking all of his stuff to the swap meet, and then lots of people showing up and people stealing from him, which is just an awful thing. I mean, you know, he's a good guy, and like I said, most of the people out there are good community people, and then you always get, you know, these knuckleheads that do stuff like that. But on the positive side of that, today I got to talk to 3 gentlemen that one of them that I knew or that I had spoken with before. He's a performance guy, and then they reached out because they're Pontiac Trophy 4-cylinder guys. So one of them has one, which is very cool, that he races in a Jeep, and it has a 471 blower on it. You know, because the 4-cylinder half of a 389 V8 isn't already cool enough. But then you got to put a 471 on it with a Hillborn injection and alcohol on it, because because why wouldn't you? So super cool on that, and he's drag racing the blocks field, and so we got to talk about all that stuff. And it's a guy I didn't know before and had never met, and yet when we got to talking, it's just like I'm talking to any of my buddies about about car stuff, because he's a car guy and I'm a car guy, and that's the great thing about meeting new people and getting involved in this. And the other guy has one of these Pontiac 4-cylinder trophy motors, and his is turbocharged. And so these guys are making, silly amounts of power with these things, and it's just cool because it's it's fairly easy to make power with a turbocharged K series Honda, or even a V series or an Evo motor. There's all of these modern things it's really easy to make power with. But this thing was built, from 61 to 63, back before we had a lot of that stuff. And it's just cool. And it's weird because they only made it for a few years. It's a really big 4-cylinder, it vibrates. There's no balance shafts. And it was designed not to be, the best 4-cylinder ever. It was designed so that it could be used and run down the same kind of assembly line and use a lot of the stuff that they were already using for that 389. So it shares rods and pistons and the cylinder head and the valve cover and the front cover, and a lot of these different things. And it's really cool that they got that done, that DeLorean and whoever the guys that were the guys behind making this happen, that they were actually able to convince somebody to do this, that this was a great idea, because it's unique and it's weird, and it's, Pontiac stuff is already kind of other guys that we don't see nearly as much of that as we see small block Chevys and LSs and big blocks and stuff, and even Ford stuff. But this even in the realm of Pontiac stuff is like super weird. So even if you go to a Pontiac show, the chances of you seeing one of these would be unusual. And then seeing one of either one of these calibers, either a 471 supercharged version or a super high output, the kind of turbo version, is very cool. And I think given the just doing the bench racing math on these things, given the displacement and the heads that you can put on them, and you'd have to make a custom cam for it, which isn't, these guys have made, I know at least one of them. I think that they both are solid roller cams. So if you did a billet cam and you made it fairly healthy, you've got a good head, you got camshaft. You're gonna have to do something, and these guys have both done their own kind of intake manifolds. But I want to do an EFI manifold, a short runner or longish runner, let's say, common plenum kind of thing with port injection on it. And I think that would be awesome. And I think that if you could take what half of a 389 V8 does, you could even make it bigger than that and make it half of a 400. And then with the head flow that you have and the cam timing, and then you put the right intake manifold on, all of a sudden there's no reason that motor can't be making fairly good NA power. And there's a lot of examples of that if you go down the YouTube rabbit hole and look at some of the stuff that guys have done even way back and run these things. And I haven't seen a lot of actual dyno testing of them, but you see what the cars that they're running them in and what they're running, what their ET and more importantly, their mile an hour weight is. You kind of get a fairly good feel for what kind of NA power these things have, the potential that they have. And then if you then extrapolate even more and start multiplying that out times boost, really good things I think can happen, assuming that all of the stuff stays together. They have aftermarket rods and pistons, and I think that they even have aftermarket cranks that they've made, which I'm sure were expensive because you can't just go to SCAD and get a version of that. So they had to have them made. But my thing is that I would like to get one, the one that I saw up on eBay, and I kind of like the fact that one starts out as, I don't know exactly which power level it is, but it's the 1-barrel or the 2-barrel version. So it's going to be a lower horsepower version. It's going to be 110 or they had 110, a 20, a 30, a 40, and they went to the 166 horsepower version had a 4-barrel carburetor on it. Also had higher compression. All of the heads that they use on these, because these are 61, 62, and 63, these were all the early Pontiac heads, so that they were the 17-degree, I think, heads. So any of the more modern heads will go on there with the right piston on there. Again, I don't know what available piston to valve clearance is, but all of that stuff can be found out. And you could get the thing to make, you know, obviously if you take the 1-barrel off and put a 2-barrel or a 4-barrel or multiple barrels or side drafts or an EFI manifold, or half of the 389-ton ram and clog the other ones, you know, whatever. There's lots of cool stuff that can be done because all of that stuff can kind of bolt on. So there's a lot of potential there for really weird, like other guys kind of content and testing, which I like. And then obviously boost also, because I think that the other thing that can be done here is a 471 is cool. You got to make a dedicated blower manifold. And I think at the power level that he's at, it might be time to step up to a 671 on that thing, oddly enough. But I'm thinking it also a centrifugal blower. I have the torque storm there, so it's self-contained. So it already has its own bracket. So then all I have to do is make a mounting bracket for the head, and that's assuming that they don't already have that torque storm. Maybe doesn't already have a plate for a Pontiac, because if they have a plate for any kind of Pontiac, it will bolt up to this thing. And that would be kind of cool. Just run a centrifugal blower. You could do it as a blow through. Holley has the 1-barrel or 2-barrel for the inline 6-cylinder 300-inch Ford motor, which also I want to test. But they have that for that, so that would just work on it. Would work on anything else too, as long as you could get the signal, get a signal from the distributor, which is not a problem. One of the guys even uses a V8 distributor, just pulled the other ones, pulled half of them out, and you know, all of that's just like super cool stuff. And that's what happens when you meet new people that are doing stuff, that you get introduced to a motor that, you know, I've obviously never run one. I've only looked it up and read about them, but it's ultra cool stuff, and that whole learning process is kind of what keeps me going, learning about all these new ones and stuff. So let's see what you guys got going on. Tap and get a new drain plug. NASCAR mirrors are made to length from each cylinder. Firing order. Our stuff, so you're having trouble with your drain plug, you have to drill and tap it or get a new one. Michael, the other day I saw a Camaro on the salvage yard with a 3800 V6, so it would have grabbed the intake if I had the right tools. I've seen a couple of those in the local yards. I haven't ever tried one of those. Eric, you want him to impact the drain plug? Tighten it up till it strips and then back it off half a turn. Usually when I put the problems I've had in the past with drain plugs are not that they won't go in. It's usually that they go in and then keep spinning. That's also not good. Also not good. An oversized drain plug, you can drill and tap that. So the video I'm working on tonight, and I'm almost done with the editing, and I only have one more segment to do, is more testing on the 400 Pontiac. So I ran the Edelbrock versus the stock cast iron quadrajet manifold. I also show you what happens when we adjust the air fuel, when we tune the carburetor, primarily primary or secondary metering rod change, which worked out really good. We did a lot of other little tuning on it just to get it ready to go in the car, but that was the big change for the air fuel. And then also what happened when we were playing with oil level in the pan. So I show you what happens with the oil pressure curve, which is kind of cool because a lot of guys don't get that kind of data, even if that's something you were testing out on the street or on a chassis dyno. A lot of guys don't get that kind of information. And it's kind of cool stuff. I just wish that I could see inside there. I have questions about what's going on in the oiling system of that particular motor, but we did what we could with it. So I'm building LS3 for an 89 GTA Trans Am. Nice. I'm going to use a big cam and float head, CNC heads, ceramic coated heads and pistons. What compression ratio do you think for 93 octane? If the cam is big, you can get away with a lot. I mean, you can get away with at least 11 to 1. I can't get my car's airflow ratio right, and no matter what injectors put on the motor, it's getting expensive. 10 sets, $5,000 in debt. Please share injector sizing wisdom. Well, the injector sizing isn't going to get you the right airflow ratio. What's going to get you the right airflow ratio is being able to tune your computer. So I don't know what computer you have. I don't know if you have a factory one. If your computer is all factory and your motor is all factory, then you need a stock size injector. Otherwise, you need to be able to go in and adjust it the way that we do. We tell the thing what air fuel we want, and then we take away fuel if we want it to be leaner, and we add fuel if we want it to be richer. And that's the only way to do it. You can put in whatever size injector you want as long as you have the ability to tune it. Did you do the quick fill versus the Q-Jet on the Edelbrock? I didn't. I look at cast iron exhaust manifolds and imagine them on the head backwards. Yeah, that's kind of how I view them for the turbo stuff. Make a crossover port to mount the turbo. Have to use an electric fan, but that's not a problem. Michael, I have an issue with a 450R Honda. Let a kid borrow it, and he got it hot, I believe, and brought it back seized up. Did you unlock it already? Does it run again? The problem is if he seized it up, if there's been transfer of aluminum cylinder wall to piston or piston to cylinder wall, more than likely it's going to go from the aluminum over to the other side, and it's galled up the pistons. If you take it apart, you can actually scuff that up and put it back together, and it probably will run as long as you can get that stuff off, if that's the case. Dan, you can try 11.5 to 1. A lot of that is not going to be a function of the cam timing and the static compression. It'll be a function of the air temperature going into the motor, the chamber design, whether it's polished, whether it's softened, what kind of timing you have. A lot of other things are going to affect that. Get a different kid. That's good. Got the radio controls on the steering wheel or on the GTA. Yep. Now with API SP, experimenting with different brands and weights. Man, half quart 1030 Valvoline dripped out in 3 days. What? Oh, it dripped out because you were changing the thing, the plug. Oh, and locks up again after 10 seconds. It's probably, you're probably got scuffing. Yeah, you could get bigger injectors and run E85. That was kind of my plan with the to see if that would work, if I could get the science right on it, on the 2.2 Chrysler with a factory ECU, if I got one with a factory ECU. A20A4 with an A2 head, VTEC killer rocker arms, has 265 PSI cranking compression. Oh, because you have small primary cams. Can I reduce that by playing with the VTC? Can I make my goal of 500 horsepower? 500 horsepower with a GT3582 is not a problem at all, especially on a K-Series Honda. I don't know why your cranking compression is anywhere near that high, and if you play with cam timing, you can definitely change that. The diesel oil in a gas engine is not a big deal. Diesel fuel in a gas engine is not good. That's not a good idea. Could you do an in-depth on a 500 horsepower peanut port short block? What plus 20 cc pistons you use, etc. We watched the video today. I don't know what else to tell you other than the pistons and the rods. You could just use a stock crankshaft and a stock block and put pistons and rods in it. Because I think we put we put rods in it too, because we put forged pistons in it. And they were in the 18 to 22. So I don't even remember specifically which ones they were. But I'm going to do another peanut port one, and it's going to be a lot more power than that. Yeah, I've heard good things about the Rotella. But, oh, Goodman, you've got gum up issues with the Rotella? Jason, I've always wondered if the intake runner length cares if the throttle plate is at the port or at the top of the velocity stack, overall length being the same. The runner length is just the runner length. When the valve is open, whether it's down at the port or whether the throttle is in a common plenum, that doesn't matter. You'll get a change in power from it being a true individual runner intake that has no common plenum, but that's another discussion. The runner length is still the same. It doesn't care where the valve is. The reflected wave doesn't care where the valve is. I'm looking into it because I gotta have a 5.3 turbo and I'm thinking of running diesel oil. Why do you want to run diesel oil specifically on your 5.3 turbo? I mean, you can run any kind of oil on there. It doesn't matter. Shell is designed for 30,000-mile oil changes in diesel trucks. Only if you have a really, really big oil filter or multiple oil filters, like ITB stack systems. I mean, I think I answered the question, right? It doesn't matter where the throttle blade is. The reflected wave is still the whole length of the runner, whatever the runner is. You should run the Q-Jet with the Edelbrock intake to compare against the quick fuel. Why do I need to do that? We already ran it on the other intake manifold. It's not going to be any different. Kurt, a 1-inch to 2-inch open spacer on a factory 4-barrel dual plane often extends the power band at the top as much as 500 RPM. So we've run spacers on divided dual planes, and it does make more power on top. It makes it start acting a little bit more like a single plane, but not all the way. How far have you pushed a 351 Cleveland? I think we did I ran one with a Novi 2000. I can't remember if it was 7, 8, or 900, something like that. Yeah, Dan, you like the spacers with the spray bars on them? What's the biggest cam a guy can run on a stock Gen 6? Not very big. 274 or 282. You're gonna have to do something to the springs though. Chris, what do you think about Calvin's Datsun with the inline? I think it's cool. I was watching his oil pan thing today. I think that that's awesome what they're doing. It's got a long front end on it, but that's pretty common stuff out at. That's one of the classes that they run out of Bonneville where they have that giant nose on them, and that thing should make good power. Yeah, the Streamliner stuff is really neat, but even those modified versions are cool. The problem with that, not problem, but the difficulty with that kind of car is especially when you're driving the rear wheels is putting all that power down. Yeah, Jose, I've mixed and matched oils. It's just, for me, it's just oil. it's just where it registers on the stick. Jeff, what's going on? Dan, you know what I would like for a street car is not a streamliner as much as a belly tanker. So I'd like the fuel tank from the P40s or P51s, and just to be able to drive that around would be cool. Oh, you didn't miss the poll because I didn't put one up yet. Okay, the poll for tonight, did the metering rod swap, because that's what I did when I was tuning the Quadrajet, did the metering rod swap on the Q-Jet add more than 20 foot-pounds of torque to the Pontiac 400? So that will be our poll for tonight. If you go with link bar lifters for an LS, should you bush the lifter boards? Do you think link bar lifters wear faster than the tray hydraulic lifter setup? I don't think that how you're retaining them is going to change wear pattern. I think, or how long they last. That's going to be a function of the metallurgy and the oiling. Chad, I build lots of engines, but I don't build them for sale. I build them for when I test. So Dan, you're a believer in Rotella after running your 388? Dan, did you see the Demon or Hellcat got clocked going between 180 and 190 on the freeway? Wow. I'm surprised he had room to do that. Hard to beat a factory 69 400 intake as far as the dual planes. I agree with that. Would you wear the old racer goggles? Yeah, and the leather hat too, because you got to, right? Perfection. If you had to pick a stock block to build for drag racing, I think the cheapest way to go would be an LS. Although if you're going to go racing, why would you use a stock one? Sergeant, what size carb would you start with? A small block Ford 302, AFR 185s, air gap, comp 274 cam. For a street car, I probably would start, and it would depend on whether it's a stick or an automatic and how heavy it was. But I think I would start with a 650 if it's a good one, and you might use a 750. Schaefer's oils. I've never heard of Schaefer's oils. Eric, you have to access you have to vote yes because you can't access the no button. Does the no not work? Is that what it is? Six hundred vacuum secondary. I don't think I would do that. Although the quick fuel that I used, the vacuum secondary, I think it was a 750 that we used on the 400, worked really, really well on the dyno. Had to exit the stream after voting. Chat froze up. Uh-oh. Got a glitch in the voting. Have you done anything with the truck doors cam and boost? Yes, that video's up. It's been up for a long time. Richard, would you feel comfortable boosting a 383 LS1? How did you get a 383 LS1? Because you can't bore them out very much. I don't think you can go 30 on an LS1 block. And I've run boost a lot on 383 iron block versions. Pump gas 650 wheel horsepower would be, yeah, that should be fairly easy. I don't know if I've ever run Royal Purple. '66 Mustang with a stick, building Richard Holder combination. And I would recommend the Brawler carburetors too, the lower dollar ones, although I think they're not so much low dollar anymore, but those work really well. Randall, did you know that we had to set the dwell on the last of the Q-Jets? What did you have to set? The ones with the feedback ones? Richard, were you giving out PS5 out to lucky viewers? Since I don't know what that is it a PlayStation? Since I don't know what that is, probably not. Have you done anything with 4.3 liter Vortec comparing stock versus Marine versus Edelbrock dual planes? I have not, I think I've run the stock one and the Edelbrock, but I've never run the marine version. Can we call Richard Ford in there? Why would you call me that? The no button is low and out of sight. .33 LS is stock bore LS1 and 4-inch crank. That doesn't make a 383 though. A 3890 bore and a 4-inch stroke doesn't make a 383. It's smaller than that. You have to do a 4030 bore. Or not a 4030 bore. That's a 408. You have to do a 3905, I think, is what we did with a 4-inch stroke. And we could only do the iron block out that far. We couldn't take the LS1 out that far. But if you have a stock bore LS1 with a 4-inch stroke, you can run that. I don't think that I would, or it's not necessary to have a 383, since you can make more power than that block would stand anyway with the stock stroke. But if you have it, it will work. Richard, you had a negative reaction to throttle body injection like Stealth EFI the other night in comparison to a carb or port injection. I don't like them. We just have not had good luck in the ones that have been run in testing. They were not repeatable. So we would run it and it would adjust, and they would run it again and it would be completely different. The power curve would be different. The airfield curve would be different. And they like some manifolds and they don't like other manifolds. They like some combinations and they don't like other combinations. And so I've not seen them work the way that a carburetor works. And I'm not a huge carb guy. If anything, I would be more prone to, if I was putting a motor together and running it at Bonneville or wherever, I probably would choose EFI. But I would also choose whatever works. And the throttle body injection is not what I would pick. Richard, got the 99 2004 manifolds for the Fox installed. Looks like they will work out. Now debating 2 1/4 or 2.5 inch pipe. Those don't matter. Those won't. You won't change anything. It's not something you should worry about. Just get it on there. The last few weeks were Ford videos. That's not an accurate statement. So if you look at all the Pontiac stuff that we did, that was Pontiac stuff. You put part numbers so I can install on my 99 Magnum Gas 360 that's better than a regular OEM style cam. Are you're looking for a camshaft to make more power? There's lots of small cams that will do that. The no button is hidden from a known pessimist. They sell 383 rotating assemblies for the LS1. I think a 3905. I don't think you can take an LS1 cylinder to 3905. I don't think it will go that far. Manual, today my Cougar XR7 1990 V6 3.8 single turbo GT35. Blew a pair of Nitto 555s in second gear. Nice. Dan, thank you very much. Go Texas, go Navy, go Pontiac. How tight the ultimate plan to wind the Pontiac 400 up to the stock rods? I'm not looking at RPM so much as just I want it to make power. So wherever that ends up being, I'm not going to put a, 270 at 50 solid roller camshaft in it. We're going to do stuff that's would be more normal for a Pontiac 400. Rattlesnake in your computer. I don't know how you get. Oh, because of the probably because this is over there. It's not really that loud here. 50,000 mile blinker fluid, nice. On the other guy's 3800 videos, did you use an 8.5 to 1 or 9.4 to 1? We didn't use the NA version. We ran an L67 and an L36. So I ran both of those, but they're both low compression, the supercharged versions of the short blocks. What do you think about re-sleeving an LS3 block to get 454 cubic inches? A 20,000 mile motor. It will be reliable. You just have to have the sleeves done correctly. And we've made a few of those. I did one with an LS6 block that we made at 468, and Brian Tooley did one. I think he did one with an LS7 block maybe, and made a 454. His made 700 and something, 702 or 703. It just stopped. I just pulled the mic away from the computer. A turbocharged drinkster. I wish I had one of those. It's just water. Yep, definitely muffler bearings. You guys must be hearing something that nobody else is hearing. What you do for a living? This is it. This is what I'm doing. Michael, I've been testing for a long time on the dyno. I've been writing for magazines and doing that, just writing stories about testing, and now doing YouTube about testing for, I think I wrote my first story in '89, probably. You guys don't hear anything. You guys are just hearing things. Each of us has an unlicensed nuclear accelerator on our back. Yeah, for the gentleman that asked about sleeving the block, you can do that if you want to say NA. I wouldn't do that if you're going to do boost. Turbos, like a 5.3 and a turbo will make so much more power than any kind of stroked NA deal that you would do. Yep, don't cross the streams. Important safety tip. I'm fuzzy on the whole good bad thing. My 400 factory rods, TRW force pistons are good for 6,200 RPM. How do you know they're not good for 6,300? I'm really kind of curious on. I mean, obviously, I'm no Pontiac expert, but given the stuff that we've done with other junkyard motors with regard to power and RPM and stuff, it makes me wonder about these claims from before. You can't do stuff with a 2-bolt. You can't do, the rod bolts will break and all these things. And I wonder how much of it is actually true. When she asks if you're God, you say yes. When Gozer asks. How do you think the parasitic losses between different power adders compare to one another? Imagine it would be easiest to run turbos and the hardest to run the blowers. Yes, turbos, blowers take a lot more parasitic loss. Turbos, I keep telling people they don't do any, and I know Gail Banks and all the guys all the engineers will argue with me about that. But I look at it like this: if you can take your NA motor and you can double the power output at 14.7 pounds, that means there's no losses. That's what it means to me. On a blower motor, you can't do that because you're always going to have people throw out numbers all the time. Stuff. Oh, it takes 30 or 40 horsepower to drive the blower. No, it's a lot more than that. I'm going to be doing. I'm just waiting to get the rest of the data from Sweden. I'm going to be doing a video on blower dyno results where we test a couple of different blowers at different airflow and boost and RPM levels, and show you what it really takes to drive these blowers. It's actually quite a bit. How fast you spin a stock 5-liter on the dyno with stock rod bolts? The one that I have has gone to 6,500 a lot. Top field blowers take 900 horsepower spin. I'd be surprised if it's only that much. Are you going to do an NA 600 horsepower Pontiac 400? I think Andy thinks that can be done. Please include the E470. I don't know what the E471 blower is. What was the best heads to throw out? The 317 LS heads? I don't know what you mean by throw out. Yeah, Dan, and they have an LS motor to drive the blowers because a lot of these blowers are over 300 horsepower to drive. And it's gone. Oh, 471. They actually had a blower dyno to spin those. I know that some guys had. I remember reading that some guys had 351s and stuff that they had to upgrade their motors to get them to spin those blowers once they were stripped up and stuff, and because the motors just didn't have enough power to spin the blower. And 1,000 horsepower electric motor would be big, and it would be a lot of current. Oh, and a giant flywheel. Okay, that would make sense. Turbos don't require that kind of power to operate. Not anywhere near that. Replaces what I meant. I remember the video, but I can't remember the difference off the 8. An 823 will make more power than a 799 head. The Recport head makes more power than any other factory head. None of the Cathedral Port heads are close. They make a little bit more power down low, but I mean, one of them flows 315 and the other one flows 250. So it's a big difference in power. I did just shy of 650 with a 462, but I had to use Kaufman racing heads and a custom bullet roller cam. That makes sense. So, Racer, here's my email. Send me an email, and I want to talk to you about that that trophy 4-cylinder. Are you in the Minneapolis area or in the Minnesota area? Yeah, I do want to do a draw through turbo on. It probably won't. It might not be on a V8, but it might be. And you get fuel cooling on a draw through setup too, but you know most people don't run intercoolers, so that it doesn't blow up. Jack, you don't really need to sleeve it down to run a ton of boost. There's lots of big blocks that aftermarket blocks that you can run a ton of boost on and make lots of power. Otherwise, everybody would be running in their pro mods. They would all be running 396 motors and not the 496 or 596 or 696 motors that they actually run. Isn't air density king? I thought that Richard Petty was king. Have you ever run the Dodge Neon SRT4 turbo motor on the not on the engine dyno, only on a chassis dyno? And I didn't even run it. I was just there when they did it down at Powertrain. Yeah, I think intercoolers are a good idea, which is why if I run a draw through setup, I'll tell people you probably shouldn't do this. But I do want to run the draw through. I want to run the Crown version of the draw through on the L Series Nissan. Early 90s BMW B&M built a Mustang 5-liter with their blower and Boral exhaust and drove it 100,000 miles. I don't remember that car, but I had 85,000 miles on mine, on my Mustang with the Vortec on it, and it was my only car. I drove it every day and raced it in the Silver State and did all kinds of top speed events and stuff with it. And the motor was still running perfect. I just took it out to run it on the Dyno West Tech. Murderapolis. That's not good. Bethlehem. Nice. Throwing out all the good ones. So how is our poll doing? Did the meteor rod swap on the QJet add more than 20 foot-pounds of torque to the Pontiac 400? 67% are saying yes, and guess what? That 67% is correct. That Elvis was king. Elvis was good. Richard, you have rattlesnake down there? I do like rattlesnakes. What's needed to rev an Alloy LS1 7800 RPM? Just a cam? No, more than that. The right cam and the right springs, and if you want to make power up there, other stuff are going to have to happen too. Free revving it, you could just do that all by itself. Church of Crystal method is nice. Richard Petty, the king. So we will end our poll with 111 votes, with 155 people here. Come on, get out there and vote. Too late. Now you don't get to vote. You lose your privileges. Jason, I don't know if you would lose power. That's an interesting question. If you look at the way that the guys at Engine Masters smashed up their headers and didn't change the power, it's kind of weird. Have you ever tried a rear turbo at the end of the exhaust? Yes. Take a look at the video that's up. I have remote, and the remote setup that I did would be not just to the rear of the end of the car. It would be to the rear end of the car behind it. So I kind of went extreme on it. Bethel Island is also known as Methyl Island. I like my rattlesnakes alive and caught and then released. Can you run an oil cooler to your turbo in feed? I did that on my Vortec. So yeah, you could. STS does the remote turbo stuff. Have you? I've watched the V12 LS stuff. They had one at SEMA, I think. $107 here. Is the timber rattle protected in California? We don't have timber rattlesnakes in California. We only have, we've got a few different ones. We have a Western, and then we also have a Western Diamondback, but only in the very southern part. We have Sidewinders out in the deserts, and I think pygmy rattlesnakes also. I've never seen the pygmy rattlesnake. Without a dyno, what's the best way to figure out if you have enough CFM? I wouldn't watch air fuel. I would just hook up a vacuum gauge to the intake manifold and see. The Sidewinders are really cool. Richard, have you ever tested 3 versus 3.5 versus 4-inch exhaust? Yeah, that video is up. I did it on a turbo motor. And I also have a video up on testing 2.5 versus 3-inch exhaust on a naturally aspirated LS. Jose, there are lots of Black Widows here, but I think that Black Widows are all over the United States. An Eastern Diamondback would be very cool because they're big. They're much bigger than the Western Diamondbacks are. I would like to catch one of those. Those are really cool. I would like to go down to Florida for the python hunt and get some of the pythons out of there. Yeah, there's Black Widows are all over. Southern Pacific. And the stepped on a Western Diamondback. Yeah, they're way more afraid of you because they think that you're big and they think that everything out there basically wants to eat them. Arizona has lots of Western Diamondbacks. Australian browns, yeah. Australia has lots of venomous snakes. Your girlfriend had a king cobra, a pet one? Those are big. Copperheads are beautiful. They're small, but they're really cool. Prairie rattlesnakes? I'm not familiar with that. We had, and I'll tell this one story, and then I got to get going. So last night, my wife went out to her car, and so the the backup story for this is that my dogs have already found skunks and stuff here and already been sprayed. So my wife goes out to her car last night, and our female golden retriever is sitting right inside the door. The door is open, and so my wife walks out to the front yard, goes to get in her car, turns around, comes back, closes the car on her door, and is coming back up to our porch. And a skunk walks across our porch and just keeps going down the yard. And our the female, who also got sprayed the last time out in the backyard, just kind of put her head down and was like, I don't see nothing. I don't see nothing. I'm not going anywhere near that striped cat. So my wife was happy that she didn't get sprayed and that the dog didn't try to get the skunk, and they all didn't get sprayed, and it would have been fun. Big rat snakes. Yeah, those are cool. Those are like gopher snakes here. No, Dan, you never told me she was the co-owner of a zoo, 5 elephants, and a few lions and tigers. Good. I want to pet a Bengal tiger. Cran grape is good, Dan. When are you going to do a Buick 430 or 455? I've already run a 455. I even ran it with boost. Those videos are up. Yep, the polecat. Back in grizzly bears. We have a lot of bears here up in Tahoe. My mother-in-law and father-in-law go up there camping, and in the campsites, they're every night they come in. Western diamondbacks are not anywhere near the most plentiful here. The Western or Northern Pacific are the ones that we see around here all the time. I catch 100 of them a year. That's not technically true. 78 or 79 of them were rattlesnakes. The other ones were other kinds, king snakes and gopher snakes and sharp tails and garter snakes and racers. Yeah, I bet, Dan. Tigers could be a handful. You just got to put the mask on that has the face on the back so that they don't try to get you. Okay, guys, I have to get going. Thank you all for showing up. I'm hoping that we'll have to see how this 4-cylinder thing works out. The 4-cylinder Pontiac, the trophy one, that would be super cool because it's different. And I'm hoping that the one on eBay, I'm hoping that it runs. It just goes on and runs and it's perfect. It's never like that. I'll see you guys all tomorrow.